a random stream today. I hope everybody is well, but because we didn't get to stream and do anything between us on, well, be fair, Trey. It's only what 4-minute delay. I've done quite well there. Yeah, because we didn't get to stream yesterday. I thought we could just freestyle a bit of an hour and have a bit of fun. Basically, it's Lorne Leftovers. As Shin was kind enough to let me know of a great Lornemas Leftovers. You was kind enough to let me know about that title 2 minutes after the fucking video was supposed to have started, but I didn't come up with a nifty phrase anyway. So, So yes, my good friend Shin is here, who I had messaged earlier, guys. Right, this is really funny. I messaged him. I just said, "Oh, by the way, Amanda's joining us," and he went, "That's great. I love her, and I would die for her within a reasonable situation." I was in stitches because I'd not read. For anybody that doesn't know, there's a part of the chat log where Lorne says I would. Can you guys remember specifically what he said? Was it?
Hell yeah.
Was it like? I would die for you within a reasonable situation. Does he actually talk about...
he's explaining love to her. He's explaining love to her.
Ah, that's right, yeah.
And he's saying, basically, love is this. Love is when you would die for someone within a reasonable situation.
Within a reasonable situation.
He sucked the whole romance out of it, didn't it?
It disclaimed it right away. Oh, shit, I got an Amber Alert or something. Hold on a sec. Sorry, guys. I didn't shut this shit down, man.
That's always happens.
It's everywhere.
Funny. Oh, that's brilliant.
Public safety alert. We are going into. Oh, we're going backwards. We got a little spike going on, but anyway, forget about it. Yeah, I mean, he disclaims what he says right away. You know, it's like, I would die for you within a reasonable situation, and it's like a reasonable situation is how he would interpret that, I guess.
Do you know what's funny about that is I can imagine his brain as he's saying it. He's thinking, he's like thinking, I would die for you, and then he's thinking, oh shit, she might expect me to actually do something here, so I best backpedal. I best get out of this.
He always locks you in, to something, to a promise, especially. So he doesn't want to be locked in. So, to dying for somebody. So he's going to go ahead and, kind of minimize it, dilute a little bit,
Well, Kayla's young and kind of dumb, so he had to be clear. He had to make it clear that love means that you would die for someone just within a reasonable situation, though. Not just for any unreasonable situation. It has to be reasonable. He had to spell it out for her.
What would be unreasonable in his situation?
I'm trying to imagine what
any situation that would involve me dying is unreasonable.
Yeah, any situation that was any kind of selflessness where he had to actually do something.
Yes, striking any sacrifice whatsoever. But,
I'm not very well tonight, Lorne. Could you stay in and look after me? That's not reasonable. No, I'm going to the karaoke bar.
Lorne, the arbiter of reasonableness. Imagine the world. But anyway,
God.
So we figured this Lornemas leftover would, that you remember that cruddy photo of the interior of his refrigerator?
I thought you were going to say the interior of his butthole, and I was like, oh, let's not go there. We don't want to talk about that.
No, this would be squeezed right between a couple of cans. No, there would be no Bud Light in there. He doesn't keep a beer long enough to sit overnight in his fridge, I don't think. But there'd be a casserole dish that's not quite covered in aluminum foil. And what else did he have in there? A bunch of Chinese food or something? It would be stuck right in there.
A bunch of condiments, a bunch of like mustard and mayonnaise and
everything's outdated.
Yeah. Maybe some old pickles.
What do we think he did yesterday? Do we think he did anything specific, anything special?
I think he went to his mom's and his aunt's house, and he just kind of begged for attention and birthday food gifts. Maybe
he got himself made a good big pie of chicken pot slop. He's got that going. Yeah. And my guess is they probably had a little cake for him with a candle,
Would
You know
it be
what's
funny
gross?
if someone as a prank like wrote icing on the cake as NBC or something like that?
He wouldn't let his mother eat it because it's got sugar in it.
You had
So.
like a big birthday cake with a load of icing on it, and like "Happy 50th birthday, Lorne," and then
It's a balloon.
all
It's a
on the
balloon.
plate you've got the cake, you've got Perverted Justice, then you've got NBC, then you've got the Church of God, then a
I hope
picture of
someone said-
Kayla.
I hope.
I wonder if he got birthday cards.
Oh
in the
yes, that's
mail.
what I wonder. I hope Xavier sent him one. That would be awesome.
I'm sure he did.
Pornographers used to send him cards and letters and stuff and all kinds of stuff. Like, I would imagine he's got birthday cards from someone.
Can you imagine? I mean, again, I've written this before, but you on your birthday for something like that to happen, you in the future it would actually make you regret the day you were born.
The
mean-
worst day of his life.
Yeah, and here's the thing though. Here's the question I have. Do you think in his mind, not ours, not objectively, it was his worst birthday?
It turned from his
Yes.
best one into his worst one, didn't it?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, there was a little bends he got from that. But what do you guys think? I think I'll throw it out there. I think that maybe one of his younger years, when maybe a Paula situation was still dwelling on him, he didn't want to sell.
Dude. Nothing would compare to him getting busted.
In his
getting
mind,
locked up for 5 years.
This is
Nothing.
the great injustice of Lorne's life. He thought, I think in his mind, he still feels like he was set up and he was lured
Well, he
there.
was set up.
He never
He was.
meant to do it. He
it
never
was
wanted
scripted.
to go there.
yeah, exactly.
And he thinks that NBC purposely held the sting on his birthday to
Yeah,
make
and
it
that's
juicier
right.
for television.
As if they surveyed him beforehand, before he contacted Kayla, and they wanted to
Yeah.
set him up.
And they
Like you
somehow
would-
knew that he was vulnerable. They somehow knew that his family didn't give him any macaroni and cheese or deviled eggs. And they took advantage of a vulnerable man and, maliciously sat back with an evil laugh, talking about how it would make it so much better to bust this guy on his birthday.
That's why they didn't tell him the Stinghouse address for a while. They wanted to wait for that. They were twisting their
Exactly.
mustaches. Absolutely.
So I think this is hands down the worst day of Lorne's life, let alone birthday. But that's what makes it so beautiful. That's what makes it so wonderful, this perfect karma and justice.
Let's not forget, he spent 6 birthdays in prison.
6.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well,
including the latest.
including that day.
Yeah,
Including that day, yeah.
yeah. So again, we don't know what happened there, but I can't imagine that would be a great birthday. And
I would rather be in prison. I would rather be in prison than have my most shameful, evil moment broadcast on television. And just the shock. And I was watching the arrest footage, the sting footage in HD, and you really get a great view of Lorne's facial expressions. And when Chris Hansen walks out, it's the most perfect.
Is that the one Raptor did?
Yes,
where-
it's on Raptor Bacon's channel. I've watched
Yeah.
it so many times. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I
It's
hope.
so.
I asked him to do the outside footage, the exterior, the black and
Uh-huh.
white, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff I'm sure that's in there if we can enhance a little bit.
Yeah,
You know,
you don't really get a good feeling for it
Yeah.
until you really see it in
Yeah.
HD. It's so great.
Especially his eyes
Yes.
and his expressions are a lot more, you can see them a lot easier.
I don't think he's ever been as afraid in his entire life as he was at that moment that Chris Hansen walked out. And it just the stark contrast from being so giddy and happy and in love with this beautiful young girl in front of him who he thinks he's successfully groomed and he's going to have the best night of his life with her, his best birthday ever. And then in an instant, you can like see his face. You can almost see his body jump
You can see
when
his
Chris
breathing
Hansen walks
change
out.
as well.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
he starts respirating, like his chest is moving up and down at a fast pace. He's in shock, and it slowly starts to sink in during the conversation with Chris.
That's
The
what it is.
ramifications of what's happening, because he can't. Because don't forget, even when he was at the police station and having the interview, he didn't really figure out what had gone on. Even when he was in prison, he hadn't truly figured it out. Like, so he'd not put all the pieces together at that point. But he still, you're right. You still had you've still got great footage of how it affects him emotionally. Because Lorne's an emotional guy. Some of these guys, it doesn't. They just take it in the stride, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I disagree that he didn't add it all up pretty quickly.
No, I mean, he knew that he was screwed.
Well, he knew he was in trouble. Yeah.
He knew he was. He knew he was
right.
fucked.
But
he
the issue
didn't
about
know.
whether Caleb was real, I think, is what you're driving at, right?
Well, no, it's many things. He didn't know who Chris Hansen was. He didn't know what the TV crew was doing there. He didn't know if Kayla was real or not. All he knew is someone had caught him doing something he shouldn't have done. And when I think that maybe when Chris Hansen started reading the chat log at that point, he must have known that he was a police officer, or thought that he was a police officer. And
do you remember when I said that as soon as he came out, I think for the first 5 to 7 seconds or so, until Chris came around to the chair and flashed the chat log in front of him, I think before that, I think he thought he could possibly talk his way out.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say the same thing.
And it wasn't until Chris came around the chair, showed him the chat log. You could see his eyes, especially with that new HD image, and he's looking right at the chat log in his hands, and that's when his chest starts to heave.
You can just see the wheels turning in his head, thinking, "Oh, I'm so."
He gives himself. He shakes his head a little bit, like this isn't happening.
Yeah.
Wake up.
That little exchange with Chris, the whole, "Oh, not a whole lot." That whole exchange, I think he thought if he acted casual, like when Chris came and greeted him, and he says, "Oh, hi, sir," like he was trying to be really casual about it all. Like he could just, if I don't act guilty, then they won't know.
Yeah. If you notice, though, the only thing he looked at was Chris as Casey slipped out of there.
Well, he was a threat. Yeah.
But a lot of predators kept their eye on the decoy as they left too, and started adding things up. Lorne was in shock. He was just looking directly at Chris. Everything was myopic at that point. I don't think he could see what was going on. That was it. And I think he thought he had a shot at getting out of there. And hanging on to the relationship, maybe.
Oh, maybe.
But it wasn't until Chris said, you've been busy for the last... At that point, Chris didn't know how long the chat log was. Several days.
As well, when he broke down at the end of the chat, when he was like... when he goes, I gotta do something because I can't do that. When you see the uncut footage, that's when he really loses it. When the full gravity of what's happening and his emotions came to the surface. It's like that's
and with
true despair at that point, because if you think about it, you're in that situation, right? And that what was interesting to me about that is it's the only time, probably until Tiffany went over the chat with him, that someone really handed it to him. I don't mean physically. This is what you are. This is what you said. And even after that, he slipped back into lawsuit mode where he didn't do anything wrong and he tried to befriend and protect her. At that point, he had to face up. I mean, to be fair, even when he was on the phone to Tiffany and she was going over the chat log, there was a barrier there. It was just a phone call. He was sat facing someone that he thought was a police officer who was reading out Mr. Penis and Miss Vagina, and he had to... Yeah. He had nowhere to go. He had nowhere to run. Nothing to say.
He's stuck in that chair.
And why, as the embarrassment on his face as he's saying it, makes you realise that Lorne knew how ridiculous what he said was. Like, how fucking crazy this giving genitals fucking cartoon names was to sort of make it easier for a child to digest, no pun intended,
And these words of contrition from him, like even, I got to do something to get off the internet, that kind of thing. No, I got to do something. It makes it seem like he had an idea what he was doing was wrong and that he was contemplating help and maybe now's the time he's got to do it. That's That's the way at least it was presented to me, the way I felt about it.
See,
Sorry. Go ahead.
I thought when he said, Chris said, well, what are you going to do about it? And Lorne said, I've got to do something because I can't do this. And he kind of trailed off.
Yeah. But meaning, I think he said keep doing this.
I think what he meant was not, I need to get counseling to stop grooming children. I think what he meant was I need to get counseling or therapy rather than go to prison. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's
a good point.
To my next point, that is that none of these guys, I mean, especially Lorne, has ever shown remorse. I think it's impossible for them to show remorse. I think, as I always talk about the guy before he walked through that door. That's the guy I want to talk to. That's, as he's typing, I'd like to be able to talk to him. What are you doing that for? That's where you get all your honest answers. Everything afterwards is just justification. Everything afterwards is rationalization at worst and fake remorse at best. Because if they were truly remorseful and they really thought they had a problem, I would accept their remorse if they turned themselves in, or if they stopped, or if they got help, or if they did something before they got caught. Before. Everything else afterwards is bullshit.
And there are people like that. I've heard, there aren't many, but I've heard interviews with people who call themselves minor attracted people or just straight up pedophiles, and they call themselves non-offending pedophiles. They don't want to hurt children.
Yeah.
They know they have this attraction to them, so they limit their exposure to children, and they haven't committed any crimes. Right.
They out themselves, which is the most important part of it. I mean, if you think about it. I don't know if
they go public. I mean, I don't know.
Well, they allow themselves to be monitored and documented somewhere. I don't know how they do it, and sometimes they form a group or something, or an association.
And they do, yeah. And they seek therapy, and they talk to somebody, and they try to. They see it as a disorder. They think they have a pedophilic disorder. And
my
heart goes out to those guys.
That's Amanda, are you talking about people that have offended and and then reformed? Or are you talking about people who seek to? Because there are people that seek that kind of therapy who have committed very terrible crimes. Do you guys watch Louis Theroux documentaries?
Yeah.
There was one where it was called A Place for Paedophiles, where there's like a hospital, a treatment centre for these guys, but they're all offenders. They've all done something to these children. I think that most, if not all of those people have got sociopathic traits that probably can't be healed. I think you could get them to the point where they might not offend again, but in order for them to commit the acts that they did, there's something very wrong with them.
Yeah, the easiest way to get them to not offend again is to just put barbed wire around them, put them in a prison,
lock them up,
keep them away from society. That's the only way to do it.
I think what Shin was saying,
if they've offended before, that's what I'm saying.
But it's hard to get to know if somebody's genuinely remorseful or if they genuinely want treatment after they've offended, because in that case, they're often forced into treatment or jail time or whatever. I was talking about people who have never offended. They've never hurt children, and they just recognize that is who they're attracted to, and they don't want to hurt kids. So nobody's forcing them.
Virtuous pedophiles. That's what they call them.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
Andrew, we saw that. The therapist, the virtuous pedophiles, the people who have never offended before.
Is that on the Australia 60 Minute show that you sent me?
Yes, yeah. They recognize their propensity and they want to do something. We
played a clip of this on a stream we did about how the scientists said that these people who have these attractions, it's a genetic thing that they are born with. It's like a it's like a default in the default, it's the wrong word, but it's like an error in the nervous system. Like I have a bit of this. I'm going somewhere with this. I have a thing called misophonia, which means that I have ridiculously negative reactions to eating noises. Specifically,
here we go again. Okay.
Hear me out. I've looked into
Like
it.
chewing gum.
Yeah, but like I've looked into it, and it's like it's basically some part of my nervous system just isn't wired right. Luckily for me, it's only eating noises. There's some guys that are born with this. Their nervous system isn't wired right, and they've got this attraction to children. Now, what we're differentiating between is the ones that don't care about who they hurt in the process, and they're quite happy to get the sexual gratification from harming a child. Now, there are those, and we're going to do a stream in the future about categories of offenders. Some of them, I don't think they believe they are actually doing anything wrong. They believe that a girl of 13, 14 is given consent, and as far as they're concerned, it's all fair game, and that it's illegal.
So many categories, yeah.
I think some of them will choose to ignore that they are doing harm conveniently, and I think there'll be some that know that they are doing harm, and that's why I used the doctor as an example. I thought Tiffany described me last time a little bit and said, well, you don't know that he's got, like, he's more aware, but if I don't agree, I would say if you're going to look at people who are more aware of social and the ramifications, someone who's educated socially, emotionally, has emotional intelligence, will know the ramifications of what he's doing potentially for a child. Let's look at Lorne and say that without letting him off or anything, because he knows he's a piece of shit, but he wouldn't have had the awareness, in my opinion, as someone like the doctor. So the doctor, he's got children as well, young girls. Does that not make it a million times worse for you? Because I'm thinking, this guy has brought young girls into the world. I believe they were teenagers, his daughters as well. So he's watched them grow up into,
and watched their innocence, and is aware of their innocence.
Yeah, and it's like he is then chosen to disregard all that for his own reasons, and he's married as well. It's like, look at somebody like Lorne, right? I think most people kind of believe that he's never had sex, and if he has, it's one drunken fumble. He's sexually frustrated. He's down and out. He's got nothing. He's a perfect example of someone who would go for this. It doesn't make it right because he's
nothing to lose. Yeah,
he's gonna. But like somebody like the doctor, it's like, what are you playing at, you fuck? Do you know?
But they're all the same. They're all
the same. And I do look at them differently, and I'm not.
Yeah. Well, one is more functional than the other. That's it. But is somehow really put on a mask with society and reach some level of success. But they're both the same people. And the thing that
don't bring the girls, he said. Hetty has just said in the chat log. That's what the doctor said in the segment on the show when he's on the phone.
Yeah. The thing that Amanda pointed out, it's hard to figure out who's really remorseful, who's not. And I think we all have to start from the default position that they're not. No one is. And and they have a big uphill hill to climb to prove they are. Because one of the things you got to throw into this is chances are this was not an isolated incident. This was, from all that I've read, this disorder, this pedophilia or hebephilia or whatever it is a serial crime. It happens. They don't just target one person their entire life. It wouldn't be. It's not unusual to have tens or dozens of victims like that.
But do you know what's interesting? I did the first part of the Rolando Resticruz chat log. I can't really claim that this is the truth, but it seems to me, from what I've seen of that chat log so far, he goes in there just looking for a woman, and he stumbles across this younger girl because he's not overtly sexual to her initially, and he slowly builds up to it. He could be an opportunist. It doesn't. So that's what I mean about you've got the different types of people. I mean, he had a lot to lose, that guy, and his downfall was as dramatic, if not more, than Lorne's.
Yeah. Well, again, Lorne didn't have much to fall from grace. Given his, he was the typical. But again, we're talking about basically the same attribute, and it doesn't matter what socioeconomic or station in life you are. That same paraphilia tendency that they have, they're all the same people. They do the same things. They do the same deceptions. They do the same sneaking around. They have a secret life. all of them. I mean, it just, I'm not saying they all go out and rape children, but, I'm talking about kiddie porn or things like that, uh, you know, and again, I agree with you. Lorne, I don't think Lorne was out there looking for children. He just didn't discriminate if they were. That's the way I look at him.
I don't think he saw those girls, Kayla and the real girls that he talked to. I don't think he saw them as children. I mean, in some ways he does. He thinks they're so cute and innocent, but I think he views them as his peers, like they're on the same emotional plane.
Yeah.
And Lorne, I can't speak for any of the other guys because, we don't have an insight into their minds like we have with Lorne. But he's made it clear that he knew that society saw it as wrong and it was unacceptable to sleep with girls that age. But I don't think he morally sees anything wrong with it. He thought he was in love with her and she said yes, she wanted him to do it, so he wasn't hurting her. I think using words like molesting or rape, those are violent words in Lorne's mind. And if he's doing it lovingly, then how could he abuse someone if he's doing it with love, right? And
we always talk about his arrested development and where he is. 12 or 13 years old. He's very comfortable in those groups. I mean, and the fact that he spent a lot of time around his nieces and their friends, I think he just felt like one of the gang. And that's what he feels with all kids. When he says he loves kids, he means he basically would play with kids and do things that they do. And he's just, there's that. But you're right. I mean, a hole is a hole. For Lorna, dick has no eyes, right? So if she happens to be 13, and those are the only ones that were responding to him, because we know that he was probably peppering adult women in the chat room too that didn't give him the time of day.
I think even aside from being attracted, I think it's unquestionable that Lorne is attracted to, or at least he was, who knows, attracted to girls of that age. But aside from just a physical attraction, I think he, like I said, is mentally and emotionally attracted to them. I think he might feel threatened by an adult woman who would know that a 37-year-old guy sleeping on the floor isn't normal or attractive.
I don't think he would say that. I think he would have a different game for them, maybe.
I have a bit of a view of what you were talking about of Lorne. He comes across as someone to me, as someone who's been sexually frustrated socially, frustrated financially, frustrated in every way. And what people like him do, and there are millions of them, like I said, they seek out the more vulnerable ones. Not because I'm not convinced that he's genetically like someone like McFetridge, but people like Lorne, they are rightly called predators because when they can't seek out somebody their own age, they go after the weaker ones. I've said before that the analogy of being a predator is a brilliant one. So Lorne is attracted to the younger ones because he sees them as an easy target. Now, someone like Kayla did start to, on the photographs, you could see her developing slowly into a girl. She was at the beginning of puberty, it would seem, or in the process. He becomes quite fascinated by that in the chat, doesn't he? I think that someone like Lorne, the more frustrated they become sexually, like for instance, let's just say they've had a healthy love life and many sexual partners when he was younger. I'm not sure he'd gone down that avenue and even had any attraction. It's interesting, we'll never know, but I find it very interesting. And people have theories. There is he's kind of almost sadistic in the way that he gets her to stick your finger up there and all that. That's the more disturbing part about me, because that's all him getting off on it, isn't it? Which is what a lot of them do in the chats, isn't it? What's your development like? How big are your boobs, etc., etc. It's a common thing, but with him, I think it's just he's 36 at that point. I mean, just off the top, do you think he's actually had any? Do you think he's actually a virgin, Amanda? For what it's worth,
I I just think, I mean, there are very convincing arguments, and I think he is more, because he's so sexually inexperienced, that's why he is so, more comfortable around kids that age, because they are the only ones who are more inexperienced than he is. I just think if somebody pointed out a 50-year-old guy in a store and said, quick, tell me, is that guy a virgin or not? I would say no, because most people, when you reach, that age, you have had sex at least once. It's really not that hard to do, especially when you are going to bars a lot, like Lorne was at one point. I think he could have found a very drunk woman and got her to come back to his house and, whatever. But if he's not a virgin, or if he's not a virgin, he's only had sex maybe once or twice, and he hardly remembers it, and didn't get into detail or anything. It was just two very, very drunk people, kind of seeing what fit where. But I don't know. I still, if I had to say yes or no, I would say no, he's not a virgin. But there's lots of very convincing arguments.
Are we doing that? Okay. All right. Keep it going, Amanda. I know you're right on the fence here, but I'll get you on my side.
I don't know, because I think, and a lot of people really disagree with me on this one, and I understand, but I think if he was a virgin, then during one of his drunken blackouts where he's crying and screaming and doesn't even know what he's saying, I think he would let it slip.
Right.
And I think
no.
Yes,
sorry.
right.
I'm retracting that.
Okay.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that.
He romanticizes it so more than sex. He wants intimacy and romance and love, and I think he would tell one of the women, I want my first time to be with you because you're so special, because I love you so much. I kind of think he might have let it slip, but the way he's so vague, he never tells anybody exactly how many women he has had sex with. He never gives them names, from what I've seen. I could be wrong, but I know. I mean, that kind of sways me the other way a little bit.
That is actually your theory that you're cutting against. You remember that?
No.
You actually brought a lot of. Your theory was that Lorne is the kind of guy who will tell you everything.
Oh yeah.
Right.
That's what.
So why would he talk about women who broke his heart, who he didn't sleep with?
Well, the only explanation I can think of is maybe he doesn't know their names. Maybe that's the extent of it. It's just some strange woman that he found in a bar, and she was gone by the time he woke up the next morning, and he doesn't even know her name. And maybe he's too ashamed.
I don't think women have any idea how hard it is for a guy to just go in with the idea that he's going to go into a bar and get laid. I don't think
in 50 years,
how hard it is.
Not once in 50 years, he couldn't manage it. I feel like every woman has that one friend, or knows that one girl who does go to the bar or goes and gets drunk specifically to go home with a guy, and she's not very picky, either because she's whatever, just gone through a breakup, or just gets really drunk and makes bad choices. We all have that one friend who does really stupid things like that.
I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
If for him to have any game in a bar and then getting her into a car and then driving her home and then spending time with her. And first of all, that's a lot of activity also, but we would hear about this. He would, even if he doesn't know the person's name, he would say, that girl I met in Washington State,
He'd never stop going on about it. He'd probably exaggerate it to the point where he was married to her for 10 years.
He probably knows whether he has nieces or she has nieces or
I'm with Amanda, though. I'm on the fence. I think there's good arguments on both sides, and the thing is, we'll never know.
Well, let me ask you something.
What about? Hold on, though. What about his son? What about?
First of all, there's part of Lorne that I believe that knows what's going on. and that
No.
he's using this opportunity to lay out an image of himself that doesn't really exist, that fails all the time. And in this case, he liked the image, the idea that he was a father. That gives him validity, that gives him some credibility, that gives him the idea that he has family that's begotten from him. You know, that whole thing. You know, that he was going to entertain that. You know,
Maybe I want to argue with you and say no, he's not that good of an
Argue with him then,
actor.
Amanda. I'm up for a debate. Go on, go for him. Go
Well,
for him.
but I would,
but
but
is
I'm
that is
thinking
but that's
back.
pretty thin, though. I mean, that's pretty thin to
I'm
say
thinking
is somebody a
back. I
virgin by the
know.
way they're reacting. I mean,
I'm
isn't there
trying
more
to.
clearer evidence than that? Can't we
I'm
get more
thinking
clear?
back to his calls, to him talking about this son, and he does not believe that it's his son. Like, he keeps insisting that he wants to get a DNA test, and he's
Yeah, that
not
was a
really
little later
buying
on.
it.
I
So
mean,
maybe.
who knows what he believes in this crazy catfish world of his. But let me ask you this: do you believe that he had a one night stand in Nashville?
No, I do not. In fact, I would bet if you look at the chat log and look at the I mean, I guess he could have before he started talking to Kayla, right? Because he was there for like
Well, he did.
two
He's actually
months.
put it close in time to the time he went to the chat house, to the Sting house. So you know, it was during the time that he was chatting with her.
Yeah, no, absolutely
And he
not.
said
Yeah.
that, and again, he says that I think we could create we can figure out what his motive was in saying that,
Hmm.
was to
It's
say
to
that he didn't
excuse
care
the
about Kayla so
condoms.
much. Exactly.
Right.
Right.
He
And
wanted
same thing
to
with the
exactly.
rubbers. The rubbers are there too
Right.
to you know, for all this stuff. So if we don't believe, and if say he is lying about that, all right, why would you believe anything he says about having sex? He lied about that one specific subject too. It's not like his credibility shot and everything else. Just about
I
having sex
do
before.
I don't think that it's I don't believe anything he says. I just think chances are at some point in his life he had sex. It's not that I believe anything that he says. I just think in 37 years, or, you know, from the time when he was a young man, say 18 to 37, there's got to be
Gotta be. That's your evidence.
one. Well, yeah, I think it's
Okay.
likely.
All right.
How many
I'm just saying.
50-year-old virgins do you know? How many 50-year-old virgins do
I
you know?
know. I was going to say this earlier. I know of three virgins in my life. Two had died, you know, when they hit middle age. But one guy, I guess nobody really knows. Let's just call him Kenny.
Okay.
You know, I was
You're not talking
16.
about Kenny, who we went out for a beer with in Boston, are you? Not that Kenny.
No,
Kenny. I'm joking, by the way.
but he was a guy that was much older than us. He was like in his 30s. You know, there was a good place for him. He bought us beer and he drove us around. He was actually a cousin of one of my friends. We were about 16, between 14 to 16 years old, something like that. And Kenny was a virgin. Everybody knew he was a virgin. But we would go to. He would come to us at school dances. Can you imagine that? These days, what's this 35-year-old man doing this? You know,
Wow,
at a
that is
school dance?
weird.
Yeah, but anyway, he was extremely unassuming. He never would hit on girls or anything like that. He was very, very shy. I mean, one time I wasn't at this. Just to tell you what kind of guy he was, I wasn't on this hunting trip, but it was like black powder season, so the snow had just fallen. So uh, they had a campsite, a bunch of them, and they decided to go out and see if they can see some deer tracks. And so they left Kenny behind in the campsite. When they came back, the entire campsite was filled with snow angels everywhere. And of course, Kenny was denying it with snow on his back. So that's the kind of story that, you know, Kenny was. That's very much Lorne-like, but
Oh,
Kenny's not a
you think
horrible person.
Lorne you
Hmm?
think Lorne is a wholesome guy who would make snow angels in the forest? I mean, you
I'm just
can't
telling you,
compare.
there are virgins out there. You asked me
Yes,
about.
but you can't compare Lorne to Kenny here because Lorne would be all over
I
those
see a lot of
14-year-old
parallels.
girls. Well, maybe you. I don't
But
know
again,
Kenny,
our
but
default position is our default position, we're all virgins when we're born, and the burden of proof is on the person to say otherwise. I haven't seen any evidence other than it's got to be. And again, you're probably right. There might very well be, but I choose to believe this because it's just funny.
Oh, well, some people think it's funnier that he is not a virgin and he has had sex maybe once, maybe twice, and he's just chasing it for the rest of his life. It's like somebody who got a taste of a
then
drug.
He's got a victim. Then he's got a real victim. I don't want that. I don't want anybody to do that. But anyway, that's. I can't believe you brought this debate out, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't realize it had stir such intense debate. To be honest, yeah, I'm a bit. I don't really have any strong opinions on either side. To be honest, I don't. Like I said, I think it's a circular argument that will go nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, we keep talking about that. Basically, what it could be, if it did happen, is it was a faceless person that was very, in and out of his life real quick, and maybe, like he says, a series of them or whatever. And that's the explanation for why aren't there any pictures or a name or something,
Well, we know he's never had a girlfriend, even a casual.
That we do know. Tiffany got that out of him. And
Yeah.
he even admitted Paula wasn't his girlfriend, right?
Mm-hmm. But he very defensively, when Tiffany said, "You've never had a girlfriend," he very defensively said, "No, but I've had a lot of one-night stands, and all those women, they wanted more than a one-night stand," which is bullshit. That's an utter lie. Because any woman who gave Lorne the time of day, he would become so infatuated and in love. So it would have to be. I mean, the more I think about it, you are kind of winning me to your side a little bit, but I still think it's very possible and likely that he did.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think it's just funnier this way. You think it's funnier that he had a taste of it and wants it now.
Well, no, I don't think it's funnier. I think it's gross, and I feel really bad for whoever, whatever woman.
Do you think when Lorne was talking to Tiffany about how it was somebody who didn't want his wallet, remember that?
Yeah.
Do you think Lorne was maybe fooled by a couple of prostitutes in Nashville? He thought a girl was interested in him, then she asked for money, and oh shit! First of all, he didn't have money, so he couldn't do it, and that's why he said things like that.
No, because if something like that happened, I think he would repeat the story over and over again of one of the great injustices of his life.
A hooker approached him.
Yeah, and I don't think he would want anything to do with a prostitute because he's so jealous that he's so.
She just had a drink an hour ago. Yeah, it's going to sit well with him.
Right. He's so horrified even of the memory of like ex-boyfriends, or like Ramona, for example, he was jealous of a boy that she had a crush on when she was a child. So I think the idea of a prostitute would really turn Lorne off. But I could be wrong. I mean, Winnie, cheated on him all the time, or she was always screwing around with some guy, and he still hung on there.
So when he talks about somebody who cared about me and it wasn't just my wallet, does he talk about his siblings?
He's talking about his siblings, yeah. And I think he's greatly exaggerating the amount of money he gave his siblings. Or
that's also a different relationship than having a romantic relationship, too.
Well, whenever he talks about that, he's saying it in the context of, that he ran away from Maine to Nashville to escape his family, his siblings who were draining him dry, basically. It's this whole story he concocted. I think it escalated to that. First it was, I was hurt because my siblings did this to me. And then it was, oh, I'm broke and hurt. They did this to me and they destroyed my life. I had to get away because they were taking all my money. It's all their fault.
That's what Erdo just said. He tries to put an appealing spin on his pathetic love life. Wants him for his wallet, hardly.
Right.
I know.
Let's leave the virgin debate there because we'll never come up with an answer, will we? We could even. No. I mean, I know Heisenberg did a stream about it. It was pretty intense, to say the least.
I agreed with a lot of Heisenberg's points.
Oh, really? I mean, okay. One of his points is Lorne knew enough about rubbers to buy rubbers. Okay, really? Okay.
No, I don't agree with that.
And by the way, does he use them for their intended use all the time? I don't think so. who washes rubbers out? But anyway, his points were so much more thin. Yours were much more convincing than his, I
With
think.
some of his point, yeah. Well, it is hard to come up with, really convincing ones, but he did have some good points that I agreed with.
Yeah, I missed
And I
that
think
debate.
one of his points was that Lorne would let it slip if he was a virgin. When he was drunk in a blackout, he would. I feel like he might reveal that little truth.
Well, okay.
Maybe. Maybe.
Well, so what is he doing now 13 years ago? The day after. Do we want to talk about that, Andrew, or where do you want to go with this?
Well, I mean, we can't. I mean, he's going to be. But you explain to us what he'll have been doing because you'll know more about the legal process. So, this point he'll still be in jail, won't he? Will he have had his first court appearance?
Well, he was arrested on a Thursday, was he? Was he arrested? So he would have. He would have been in court the next morning.
Right.
So he would have been there. He would have got a $50,000 bond, and now he would have to call home.
He would be calling home, trying to come up with that bond, right?
Yeah, and when I first got into Lornography, I thought that at this stage is where he developed the hatred for his siblings, meaning that he had given them money, but they wouldn't put up his bond money. All they would need is to put up, my guess is they can get a bond for 10%, and then just put up a house or something. But nobody would do that. And I think his siblings even may have owned a house too. And, it kind of makes sense that they're not helping him when he gave them money that he's asking back that he needs again.
Right. And take into consideration the Betty thing. He had just run away from his crime, of stealing from Betty. And according to Lorne, he gave a lot of that money to his siblings. Right. And his sister was on the job with him.
Right. And he could have been trying to retrieve that money back for Betty.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be the source of his hatred.
He never says that, though. He never comes right out and says, when I needed them, they weren't there for me. I gave them this money, and
he said it in the chat log. He said it in the chat log.
I know, but we're talking post-arrest here. So I would think that he would cry to Ramona and, whatever woman he was talking to about how his siblings are horrible because when he was in jail and he needed help, they wouldn't help him.
Well, maybe because he realizes everyone would understand the absurdity of him trying to get stolen money back.
Or maybe he was so ashamed that he didn't want to talk to any of his siblings because then they'd be like, why the fuck are you in jail? Why do you need, why do you have a $50,000 bail? And he'd have to explain, well, I met, an online girlfriend. It turns out she was a kid and I went to, he'd have to come up with this whole story. And then he'd have to tell them, it's your fault I went there to see her because I was all messed up because you took my $700 and didn't pay me back. So I wonder if he even tried to contact his siblings for the money. Maybe what I bet he did? I bet he tried to get mom to do it for him.
Yeah.
I bet he tried to have her do the dirty work.
Yeah, I mean, she does all the legwork, and plus it would be easy. It would be the only way he can do it. He can't make all those phone calls. They probably won't accept his collect calls.
Right, because you have to accept them.
Yeah. So
you're probably right.
He was going to start time serve, but he had no idea for the next 2,000 days he wouldn't be out.
Imagine what we see of Lorne. He got 5 years. I wonder how he would have reacted. Would it have been on par with his reaction in the house when Chris Hansen confronted him?
Well, he probably felt lucky because they were threatening much longer than that. Yeah, so maybe he felt a little bit of relief.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they threw the 30 years at him until they had the 5 available for him. Take this, or we're going to do this. They don't. There's no sense in scaring somebody, ahead unless you have a reason to do it. They could overcharge. I think they charged him with what they charged him with at the time, but they were going to add superseding indictments to include the child porn stuff, and that's used as a hammer to get him to take the 5 years, 60 months when everybody else was getting 48.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you both a question actually, but a little bit. It's been thrown around a lot, but I'm going to have to keep this stream relatively short. I was going to ask you first, Amanda? Why is it? And I know it's a bit of a. It keeps getting asked this question, but why? What is it about Lorne's case that is so intriguing? Why are we talking about this one guy all the fucking time?
I think it's because of the amount of material that we have on him. I think
but that sorry to interrupt, but I don't
go ahead.
I think that the reason that we have so much material is because of him.
Right.
So what is it about him that creates that material that makes us so interested in him? For instance, we wouldn't have all this material about somebody like Jay Refner, would we? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, what Lorne is so socially unusual, and that makes him really intriguing and interesting. He's an open book. He'll say things that, I guess it's that he has no shame or embarrassment. He'll say things that most adults would, even if they feel that way, they're not going to come out and say it. You know, for example, his insecurity, he will unashamedly scream about how he feels threatened by other men. And I think most guys wouldn't do that. They wouldn't put up with it. They would end the relationship or whatever. But with Lorne, nothing embarrasses him. You hear his catfish, or Tiffany's a perfect example. He was willing to listen to everything she had to say and tell him what a horrible person he is and go through the chat log with her just out of pure desperation. Who the fuck would do that? Anybody else would say, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want to relive the worst part of my life. You're not going to force me to read this shit with you. You know, you're not my therapist. I don't need your help with that. This is crazy. And they would end it, but he would do anything. He's so incredibly desperate and lonely and pathetic. And for anybody else, you might feel kind of bad for him, but he's such a hateful,
he's very hard to have any sympathy for, because he displays all the characteristics, even within, like, when the therapist calls with Sam. Because, you know, it's strange, right? I don't know whether you guys have the same thing, but on my iPhone is all my music. I have, like, Apple Music, and all of my downloaded music is on there as well, because I've got, like, a 128 gig phone. So when I get into my car, every now and again, it selects random tracks from my entire library. And of that library, all of my Apple Music and everything I've ever bought, plus a lot of Lorne shit. And it was the Ramona breaks up with Lorne call, where he is talking to her and he's found out that Sam Pendleton was the therapist. And he's going on and he's questioning her, and he knows what's going on, but he won't let it slip, and he doesn't want to let it go. And she's being really horrible to him, Ramona, more than she's ever been in the past. And he's clinging to that. He's got, you see, this part of him that has this idealistic romantic vision of him being happy. And I would feel sorry for him, but the problem is, he has no admirable traits. I do occasionally think, oh my God, leave that guy alone. But like you said, Amanda, it's very difficult to do that, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. If he had come out, so when he, the lie he made up about the one night stands he was having in Nashville, he was embarrassed that he was so in love with Kayla. He thought that was what he needed to hide, was that he was so obsessed with this child. But if he had come out and said, yeah, I thought I was in love with her. That's why I went to do it. That's why I went to break the law. And I didn't think I was doing something harmful because I really thought I was in love with that girl. Then, yeah, people would laugh at that. But there's nothing to pick apart. You know, like
right.
It's intriguing because you want to pick apart his lies and throw them back in his face. And, you know, how do you explain this then? And how do you
got nowhere to go when he admits something?
If he's honest, exactly. If he had just come out and said, I saw this girl, I knew she was 13, but I liked it, and I thought I loved her. Yeah. Then what could you say? There's nothing. We wouldn't have this whole project and community that everybody's been a part of. There would be nothing to
I don't think you'd get any predators to say anything like that. But again, before they were caught, yes.
I don't think he has that ability to, like to make decisions based on what the right thing is to do. He doesn't seem to have a moral center at all. Like, we do think he's like a purely impulsive creature. Like, he's such low down the scale that every decision he makes is like a predator roaming around. What can I gain from this? Like a survival, fight or flight. That's all he's got. He doesn't seem to have any part of him that's conscientious, and when as humans we have to be conscientious, and he just doesn't have that ability. Or is it that he chooses not to? Because I can't think of any examples. It's like I mentioned it in the video that I did when I talked about, does Lorne have any positive aspects to his personality, which was very difficult, but he just doesn't seem to have that ability to do anything good.
His own ego won't let him admit, even though that would be, if he was even a tiny bit intelligent, he'd be able to think one step ahead, and it would stop at least some of the trolling and some of the arguments between him and his girlfriend if he just admitted these things. But his ego won't let him. So he had to create all the lies and excuses for why none of this was really his fault. And he never really wanted to go there. And in spite of the evidence right in his face, the chat log itself, which shows him that he did in fact want to go there. He was very much looking forward to it, and nobody lured him there. Nobody forced him to go. He just can't accept that himself, because then he would have to accept that he is, a terrible person.
He refuses to accept that he ran the show.
It's just like he refuses to accept that he is not attractive. He refuses to accept that he isn't a good singer, or that he'll never be a country music star. He refuses to accept and understand that all the people online, including the people that he talks to regularly, are just laughing at him. He's putting on a show for everybody. No matter how many times people tell him, these people are recording your calls, they're laughing at you, these aren't your real friends, he refuses to see it. He refuses to see that he doesn't have a celebrity fan base.
He's got that ingrained narcissism in him that Trump has. It's very similar on a totally different scale, of course. Like when Trump's arguing with journalists and they're just asking him legitimate questions and he just calls them bad people. You're a bad person for asking me that question. It's the same thing with Lorne. He refuses to accept anything. That's, and Eurodo's made a great point in the chat that I don't know. He says it's happened recently, but Lorne, I remember a few years ago when he was paying Betty money, but only because the community was forcing him to do it because he thought he could make money out of it, and he was calling Betty a dumbass, and it was like, dude, it was just. That just proved, if you ever needed any proof, that he was so. I mean, I can't find the words to say how wrong that is. That he would say that.
Well, he doesn't think very far ahead. He's a creature without foresight.
But that's a perfect example. Betty is the villain because she exposed his wrongdoing.
Yeah.
Just like NBC and Perverted Justice, they're the bad guys because they exposed him. I think that's his worst fear. And you can see in the Sting footage, when he really broke down was when the cameras came out, because that's when he knew that everybody was going to see what he did. Everybody was going to know. That's the only part that really bothered Lorne.
Good point.
Wouldn't he have thought that but he would not have realized it was going to be as published.
And he had his cap down, didn't he? He's pulling his cap down so that no one can see his face. And of course, a lot of them do that. They don't, apart from when Jay Rafter turns around and he's going through the door and looks directly at the camera. That cracks me up every time.
Speaking of which,
it's so funny.
Raptor's enhanced version of the Sting when you see him get up, I've never saw this before. He's got a streak of sweat going down his spine.
Oh,
Check it
I'll have
out.
to rewatch it. I will.
Check it out.
I love it. I've watched that so many times.
I'm gonna have to watch that again.
Watch it, Andrew. It's wonderful.
Is that the one? Yeah. I'm looking for. I'm gonna watch that again. That's fantastic. The Betty thing is a great example with regard to how he reacts to other people exposing him and stuff. It's kind of, I suppose it's another element. The whole thing is because he can't face up to anything. If he'd have faced up to what he's done, I don't think we'd be even having this conversation now. It's his refusal to accept it. But I agree. It is. It never ceased to amaze me. His even like as short as a year ago when he was talking to Tiffany and he was like, "It's because I couldn't say fucking no." I was like, "What did he just say?" He even shocked me back then, even after everything we'd seen and heard. It's like, how can someone be so out of it? How can a human being function?
Because he clung on to that. I can imagine how that therapy session went. I can imagine him crying and whining about how
the doctor.
Right, with the well, whatever I'm sure he was crying about why he left Maine and went to Nashville to begin with. And he was telling the mac and cheese story and how his family kept asking him for things and he just couldn't say no, even though he probably should have said no and not given them money that he couldn't afford to give them. And the therapist said, well, it seems like that's your problem, Lorne. You can't say no. And he just clung on to that. And he's like, yep, that's why everything bad happened. That's why I tried to molest that kid. I couldn't say no. But Tiffany brilliantly made it very clear what that means. When Lorne says, I couldn't say no, what he means is I couldn't say no to myself. He would never say no to himself. He acts on every impulse, whether it doesn't matter. Whatever he wants in the moment, he'll go for it, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong.
Right. I still believe there's something, and I know, I have to keep going on about this, but I don't believe that people like Lorne are just created. So something significant happened to him in his past to have this bizarre refusal to accept responsibility.
Hey, can I say one more thing before we talk about his past?
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up anyway, but, whether it's the Bunky incident or his father leaving or something, I think Lorne's a deeply, deeply troubled human. In case we needed me to fucking spell it out, but let's do it anyway. He's a very troubled, sick, ill, mentally ill human being that needs round-the-clock care.
Monitoring.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to fix him.
Yeah.
But the other thing about Lorne, another characteristic about him that at least the way I feel, is he has no appreciation for risks at all. It's like, or jeopardy, or any kind of, and danger for that matter. When he was on the phone with Tiffany and going through his confession about what he did with the real victims, they took a break at some point, right? And he started his biscuit talk with his dogs, there was no revelation at all. Like, oh my God, you realize what you just told her? You realize what you
because he didn't see what he was doing as harmful.
Well, again, and then look in this chat log, and again, appreciation for risks. That's what we're talking about here. Telling her to get a lock on the door, telling her to ask her father for thongs. Like, he doesn't understand that that's not risky behavior and getting caught, at least in his situation. He has no appreciation. He doesn't think past his nose at all.
Right. Well, and there's, he's drinking when he's not supposed to be on probation, the drunk driving every weekend.
Right. Failing a polygraph test, that's not a big, or how about that cop that stopped by and caught him drinking and he knew he was going to have to answer probation next morning.
Well, he was scared pretty shitless of that, but
he went off on a million other things.
Right. But
that's the only thing I would be thinking about. I don't know about anybody else.
Me too. Well, I would be terrified. And if I got busted that time and I didn't go back to prison, I would be too scared to ever risk it again.
Yeah,
The thought of going back to...
I'm sorry. I was going to say, every time a modification gets in front of the judge to sign that either restricts his internet or restricts his drinking or puts him back on a monitor or whatever it is, the judge could easily say, I want to see this guy. He has no idea that he's got to hope the judge goes for it. You know, he has no appreciation for risks at all.
I think every modification it just emboldened him to drink more. Every time he was caught drinking or failed a breathalyzer or whatever, and he didn't immediately get arrested, he thought he was safe, and it just emboldened him to keep violating probation. And that's not the only way he's violated probation, too. We know that he tried to get around probation by having nude pictures sent in the mail. He got the smartphone that he wasn't supposed to get.
That's a dangerous guy who doesn't appreciate risks. That's a dangerous guy.
I agree with that.
On that note, I think we're going to have to wrap it up, guys. I'm sorry it was just a short one, but isn't it amazing? You know, sometimes you come into these without a specific topic to talk about, and we've just freestyled it for an hour and 10 minutes. That's how much material and how interesting the Lorne subject is. You know what I mean? You could just talk for hours. We could do like a 24-hour stream where we just talk about him and about the different aspects of him. And we've not even touched on half of the things I wanted to about, you know, why he's so funny, because there's, you know, the different elements, that the humour that make up, you know, because if we didn't have the humour to it as well, and all the crazy antics he's been up to, and his bashfulness and all that, it wouldn't be what it is. And all the crank cinema stuff, it's just an amazing little corner of the internet. I mean, fuck me, I can't imagine. I can't believe I'm still making these videos. And people still like them.
He's so full of amazing quotes. Everything he says is so funny. It's so stupid and funny.
So many, isn't there? There's so it's like a real life sitcom that's got a never-ending supply of lines. It's like going through seasons 1 to 10 of The Simpsons. It's got an infinite amount of great lines. Me and my friends are always quoting Simpsons to each other, because it's like, I'm sure that many people do it, and it's like that between us guys. It's like what Shin messaged me earlier and said, I love her so much, I'd die for her within a reason. But it's just so funny.
Well, yeah, his quotes they're full of energy, and they look like they're an endless source coming out. Anytime he opens his mouth, doesn't matter what he says. You know, it's memeable.
It's all so funny. Like Patrick Teacup Ireland, during his streams, all he does is just repeat what Lorne says in his Lorne voice, and it cracks me up the whole time. I love listening. It's like my favorite thing to listen to. Just Patrick repeating Lorne's stupid quotes. And that's kind of the phase I'm in right now. I'll go through different phases. Sometimes I'll get really angry and I'll want to analyze the sick psychology behind him, and like what the fuck is wrong with him, and sort of get myself all worked up about it. But right now I just think everything he says is so funny and stupid, and it makes me kind of want to talk to him.
Do you have a favorite one thing that he said that makes you laugh the most?
Oh God, give me a sec to think. It's all of it.
Too much. It's too much. How can you go sift through it all? You'll think of something else after you think of this, Amanda.
Right.
There'll be something. There'll be something, whether you realise it or not, that has made you laugh more. It's just like there'll be a song somewhere that you've listened to more than any other song. You just don't know that it's your favourite song. You know what I mean? Well, maybe you do.
The way he says things, his misuse of the language, and his
So he fucked her in the ass.
Word was. I weren't gonna do that.
His misuse, his casual. It's almost like a blatant misuse. It's like he's trying to mix them up, to put them opposite of where they belong, were. It's so stupid.
Well, you know what's
hilarious.
He uses the word anyway, correct? A lot of people, and I used to do this too, always put an S at the end of it. The word is anyway. I guess it's not plural. He does that all the time. He gets that right.
Well,
he also does
the only thing he gets
right. Y''re. those stares right. You know?
Well, that's good because I couldn't stand to. That's a pet peeve of mine. I wouldn't be able to read the chat log if he didn't. That's surprising though,
Well, I
because
know that's what I'm saying. I think it could
yeah,
be his way of thinking it's colloquial and cute. You know, that's why I talk like that. Who knows?
who knows?
Can you
Oh
think of a
Lord.
favourite moment, Shin?
Hell no. I just,
Didn't you
yeah,
just
I
have
mean,
a go at Amanda for not picking something?
I can think of something that comes to mind. Um, but just every weird situation that he's in, it's like, okay, you know, there's some big event that's taking place where there's a police officer, there's a lawyer, there's you know, maybe a government official, a victim, and there's Lorne in this group commensurating with him. You know, it's like that's weird to me. You know, the fact that he thinks he could. You know, where's our pedophile? We need our pedophile. Get him in here.
I have one just came to mind. He's having aggressive phone sex with Winnie, and he is scolding her while having phone sex with her, telling her, "You need to get my fucking pussy here right now, baby.
Right now.
I want it here with me right fucking now." It is the strangest thing I've ever heard.
Right, I've not even heard that.
I think
Oh
it's safe to
God.
say that everything he does, every waking moment, probably even when he's sleeping, he's funny as shit.
Yeah, Tiffany did said she'd love to have a camera just following him around just for the laughs that we'd actually get. You know what I mean? That's true, isn't it? I can safely say my favourite moment is the court bit where he, not just because I was like one of only
Oh, we were
5
there, yeah.
people that saw it, when he just went, I just want to do my cooking show. It's the context of which it was said. Like, to say it in that environment when it was so unexpected, when it made no sense, when it's so deluded in what he said. It's just so, there's so much humour contained within that, and the what, you know, he's crying when he says it as well. It's like, what's there not to laugh about, you know?
That was like a Broadway show, man. Everything was there. Mama Gwen spoke too. That was awesome. Yeah, I didn't want to throw that in there because you know, not everybody else actually heard it, but yeah, that was
I
pretty
can
funny.
imagine it.
Yeah.
I can imagine it.
Yeah. Andrew, you still there?
Uh-oh.
I think we lost him. Tiffany, if
Uh-oh.
you're out there, sending love. How are
What
we
happened
still
to
on?
Andrew? I don't know. Can you guys hear us? Uh-oh.
Andrew could have muted himself. Can you guys hear us in the chat?
It doesn't look like he's muted. Yeah, Codfisher says he can hear us.
Can you hear Andrew if he's speaking at all? They can. Okay. So
Well,
it's
I
just
guess it's just me and you, Shin.
yeah. We should fuck up his channel right now. What do you say?
I would never.
All right, let's do some Lauren shower videos.
That's another good one. That's something that makes me laugh every time is watching that shower video
Where
where
he's
he
punishing her.
is, yes, he's punishing her and he repeats himself. Oh, he says, "You were too
Another
busy
guy.
talking to that guy all fucking night. And you can't see my dick because you were talking to him all fucking night." He says it so many times and he has such a smug look on his face.
Yeah,
Like
you're
he
not gonna
feels
get the
so,
whole picture.
yes, he feels so powerful in that moment, even though you know he was crying all night the night before because he couldn't get in touch with her. That's great.
So this is your punishment, and I'm really sorry I have to do this to you. Anyway, I think I don't know what I'm gonna text him or something. I don't know if he shuts this down or we do. Do we just shut the lights off and leave? What do we do?
I don't know. Let's see.
Dude, where are you? I wonder what Lauren's doing now.
I guess he is finishing up the chicken pie.
I just got. Okay, Andrew, you realize I can't. He wants us to wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
He says you'll have to wrap it up for me, and I'll end stream. Okay, so I guess he's listening or something. He can't get through. But anyway, all right.
Okay. Well, that was really fun, and
I'm going to bounce the ball now.
I don't know what happened to Andrew, but okay.
All right, guys.
Chew your gum. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.